The League of Women Voters is a non-partisan, grassroots, volunteer organization dedicated to educating voters about national, state, and local issues with events that are free and open to the public. Our motto is making democracy work. Membership is open for everyone. So we welcome you today to the Reimagined Winchester High School information session. I hope everyone has in your hands an agenda for the day. In this agenda, you will have what we're going to cover during the afternoon, and then some acronyms that are helpful. And in the back, some of the meetings that are coming up where you're going to be able to provide direct feedback. And then also the contact information for the presenters who couldn't be here for the session, but who really was the mastermind. So let's start. Town Manager Richard Howard.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Juanita, and thank you to the League for providing this opportunity to provide some very important information to the community at large about a project that the town has now been studying for approximately a year, going back to December of 2011, January of 2012, under the auspices of what is known as the EFPBC, which is an acronym for what is really an educational facilities planning group, which is a bunch of volunteers that are town residents and have been overseeing a number of facility upgrades for the educational buildings in Winchester over the past 16 to 17 years, dating back to that time when architects were selected to go through this feasibility stage for the upgrade of Winchester High School, the EFPBC, in conjunction with architects and a construction project manager, have been overseeing what has been this feasibility effort and gets us to today. Over the last year, various designs have been put on the table for the reconditioning of Winchester High School. The potential for new buildings have also been considered. But as of April of this year, the town submitted and the state, through the Mass School Building Association, approved a renovation of the existing building that we are in today for the final design, and the architects and the EFPBC are now moving that process forward to its conclusion by the summer and fall of this year. And along the way, community input has been sought and gained many good ideas about how the building, in addition to being an educational facility for the 21st century for Winchester High School students and faculty, can also be a community asset as well. And the creation of high schools, either their refurbishment, as is the case here, or new ones, as is the case in many communities throughout Massachusetts, is about as close to an old-fashioned bond-raising, New England bond-raising as you can get. It is probably next to something like Town Hall, the one building in the community that has as much civic input as any other. It is the site from which thousands of high school students launch their careers into secondary education, in many cases to many of the premier colleges and universities in our region and across the nation as well. It's the seat, really, of and the measurement of academic achievement for many of the students who find their way through the Winchester school system. But it also, in many ways, ends up being the seat of a lot of civic activity. And the balance that the architects in the EFPBC will attempt to strike is to put together a first-rate 21st century educational facility, while at the same time making the building usable for many civic purposes. The estimated budget is currently around $127 million. That is why it's a very important civic and educational opportunity. And the civic opportunities really fall into 4 categories. It's really about additional educational uses for the community, not only the students here, civic and social opportunities for the community at large, athletic and fitness opportunity, again, for the community at large, and then cultural or creative artistic opportunities. All of those kind of 4 categorical opportunities will be, again, the challenge of the architect to make the spaces that they're designing here fit for use during the school day, but then after hours also be available to the larger community. Spaces like the one that we currently find ourselves in, an auditorium that under current state standards would be oversized, so ends up being a wonderful opportunity to have both civic and social activity and creative arts activity, which will provide drama groups, fine arts groups, creative artists in the community with an opportunity to be able to use this location and facility as kind of home base for things that can be done after hours, as well as the drama and fine arts activity that will take place during the school day. Similarly, athletic and fitness opportunities will occur in the gymnasium. Again, a facility that is oversized under current MSBA standards, but provides not only the school system, but the town as well, with opportunities to use the facility after hours, on weekends, for a range of students and for uses beyond just having high school athletics in there during the day. Educationally, there'll be adult, ongoing and career training opportunities in the building for spaces that end up becoming used as dual facilities, not only for the program day for the school, but also for learning opportunities with perhaps university connections to the universities in and around the greater Winchester area. Sustainable efforts are under consideration, and the hope is that those sustainability efforts, some of which you'll hear about today, also provide opportunities for the community at large. The civic and social opportunities will occur in a number of areas in the building. There will be opportunities in small and large spaces, some of which will be identified by some of the other speakers as we go along in the program. But hopefully the town at large will understand that this is not just the refurbishment of an educational facility, but in fact it will be the opportunity to provide after-hour, weekend educational, social, and fitness and athletic activities for the larger community. So many of the speakers that you'll hear from today will tell you about the educational and sustainable features going forward. I'm going to wrap up my remarks by introducing the next speaker, which is the Superintendent of Schools, or who is the Superintendent of Schools. And Bill McAuliffe is part of that EFDBC committee that oversees the effort going forward with the architects and the construction manager. And we'll tell you about all of the great educational opportunities that the refurbishment of Winchester High School will provide. Bill?
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for that great introduction. Give me 1 second to organize it. So this may be a challenge, managing the computer, the microphone, and some notes off at the same time. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. My job today is to provide you with a general overview of why a high school project now, and as well, where are we now in the process. My remarks will reflect a general overview, and I'll be happy to engage in more specificity if I can during Q&A. I think you'll find as we go through my brief presentation that many of the remarks that Richard provided fill in some of the details in terms of my general overview, as well as remarks that Mr. Nixon will make will fill in a lot of the details related to my remarks as well. In addressing the question, why now, I'll touch on the issues of enrollment, current building condition, and its impact on maintenance and operating costs, as well as some educational program considerations. As most of you are aware, the Winchester Public Schools K-12 enrollment has increased by approximately 1,000 students over the past 12 years. The high school population for the 5 previous years has remained fairly steady at about 1,100 students. This current year, the high school enrollment grew by an additional 75 students to 1,167. Over the course of the next 7 years, we expect the high school enrollment to grow by another 12% and enroll over 1,300 students by the 2020-2021 school year. In addition to enrollment growth and the need for expanded instructional space to meet those enrollment needs, the high school facility is in need of millions of dollars of renovation, maintenance, and building systems replacements. Each year, the school committee works with the capital planning committee to update its 5-year capital needs plan. This slide represents some of the identified capital needs for the high school that were a part of the latest update that the school committee provided to the capital planning committee last fall. These needs alone carry a price tag of well over $10 million, and I think that's a very conservative estimate, and only provide for work to be done within the current facility structure. As an example, over 75% of the current instructional space is interior space, which lacks access to natural light and operating windows. And as the facility continues to be energy inefficient, our annual operating costs continue to be a challenge. All of the issues just noted and more impact the educational program. Some examples of that. Additional instructional space is required because of enrollment growth, in addition to the lack of space currently necessary to meet our educational program needs. A high school project, if it moves forward, will provide, at this point, our estimate is an additional 11 general instruction classrooms. Another example, the science labs. Science labs have not been updated in 42 years and reflect design space that is not in line with current science education instructional space needs and design. A high school project, if it moves forward, will provide 12 new science education instructional spaces that reflect flexible design attributes to meet current and future needs. A high school project, if it moves forward, will allow us to redesign an interior layout where approximately 80% of the instructional spaces will be located on exterior walls with ample daylighting, operating windows, and improved circulation design. You'll be presented, as I indicated earlier, with more detailed information on this aspect of the program design in Mr. Nixon's presentation. So, where are we now in the high school feasibility study process that began about 14 months ago? I'll speak to well, this will be a challenge. I'll speak briefly. Hopefully I'm doing that. I'll speak briefly to the alternative site analysis, then update you on our current status with the MSBA, provide details about the timeline moving forward, and then finish up with a review of upcoming opportunities for the public to continue to stay engaged with us in this project. One required aspect of the feasibility study, as mandated by the MSBA, was for the EFPBC to study pros and cons of renovating the current school, as well as the pros and cons of building a new school on another site. Prior to submitting the preferred schematic option to the MSBA, which was done in February. The FPBC spent a number of months last year, from May through November, exploring the pros and cons of a new high school on alternative sites. In order to build a comprehensive high school that will effectively serve all the needs of almost 1,400 students, requires above 15 acres at a minimum. The ideal acreage would be in the area between 20 and 30 acres, and that would be needed in order to provide an appropriate number of parking spaces and field space. At 15 acres, minimum parking, and probably one playing field. As you most likely are already aware, those kind of open spaces do not exist in Winchester. The 5 alternative locations that were studied, and this has been reported on previously, included the Wrightlock Farm, the Lynch School and adjacent water department land, the Parker School site and the adjacent Mount Pisgah. That would have been an interesting project. The town forest and Skilling's Field. All of these options in the end were deemed not viable for a project the scope and size necessary for a new high school. As a result, the preferred schematic option voted by the FPBC and endorsed by the school committee is the renovation addition on the current site concept. Detailed information about each alternative site and the reason for not building at that location can be found in the preferred schematic report that was submitted to the MSBA. This report can be found on the high school project website, and if you're interested in understanding all the pros and cons and the rationale for why those sites were deemed not viable, I encourage you to go to that report. It's very comprehensive and very detailed. For those of you who are not familiar with the MSBA, the acronym comes from the state agency's formal name, Massachusetts School Building Authority. This state agency regulates all school building projects that involve partial state reimbursement for the cost of such a project. Established by the state legislature in 2004, the source of funds come from the state sales tax, where 16% of the annual sales tax revenue is earmarked for this agency. The MSBA's Board of Directors approved the renovation addition concept for the high school building project at their April 2nd board meeting. This allows Winchester to move forward in the schematic design phase. Schematic design will move the project forward by creating and determining the design details necessary to provide a detailed cost estimate. The total cost estimate, as indicated by Mr. Howard, submitted with the preferred schematic report, is $127 million. It is anticipated that Winchester's share of that cost would be between $80 to $85 million, as the MSBA reimbursement rate is anticipated to be somewhere between 34 and 40%. This slide lays out the timeline for the project moving forward. Beginning April 2nd, our design team, the FPBC, started immediately to move forward with schematic design. We'll be working hard on that right up until August 8th, when the final schematic design and preferred scope and budget packet is submitted to the MSBA in preparation for their October 2nd board meeting. We anticipate that the MSBA board on October 2nd will vote to approve the project as well as the project scope and budget. It's at that point, on October 2nd, that we'll fully understand the amount of reimbursement that the state, the MSBA, will be providing to this project. And then under SBA guidelines, the town then has, from October 2nd, 120 days to secure its share of the funding, which we anticipate will be done through a debt exclusion override. So between October 2nd and February 2nd, 2014, town meeting will meet to vote on the project, and a town override vote will be scheduled. This timeline will allow us, if approvals are garnered under that process, this timeline will allow construction on this high school project to begin sometime in January, February of 2015. The goal of the FPBC and the school committee is to continue to provide opportunities for public engagement as we continue in this process. The EFPBC meets every Wednesday, every other Wednesday. We've been meeting specifically on the high school project. The dates on the screen in front of you are the next 4 dates that are scheduled, and other meetings that we have on those Wednesdays between now and then may in fact involve the high school plan, and we'll keep you updated in that regard. The meetings are held at town meeting, 6:30 on those dates. There's a process for public comment and questions at the beginning of each meeting, and as we go through the meetings, there may be opportunity for further comment as well, and that's a good time to come and let the EFPBC know what you're thinking. In addition to that, on May 28th, at their next regularly scheduled meeting, the school committee will hear from the design team, SMMA Architects, and the project manager, Skanska, with an update on the process up through March 28th. That will be a good opportunity for the public to hear the update as well. And that meeting is scheduled for 7 o'clock at the school library. That's what time school committee meetings start, and this will be the first item on the agenda for that meeting. There will be a Sustainable Design Charrette, a public meeting scheduled for June 5th. It will be held here in the auditorium. It will take place between 2:30 and 4:30 p.m. The public is invited to come and express their opinions and ideas and input on sustainable design, which is going to, we hope, be a very important part of this project. And then 2 more general public information meetings scheduled for June 19th, 7 o'clock here in the auditorium. That's a Wednesday night. And we have a tentative meeting scheduled for July 23rd, which will be a couple of weeks before the submission. Thank you very much. And now Mr. Chris Nixon, Vice Chair of the School.
So while Bill is helping me pull this up, first a public service announcement. The New York Rangers and Bruins have each scored a goal with 11 minutes remaining in the first period, in case anyone is curious.
You're not supposed to see that.
So bear with us, we're just going to try to open this directly off the flash drive because we've got a hardware problem.
Already open.
Let's take a look. No. Okay.
I don't know if that counts.
I know Marilyn will penalize me for that. So I was asked to speak about 21st century education and learning, which is an interesting concept. We've heard a lot about it. Some of you may not be quite clear on what it means. There's so many buzzwords that float, many of them are on the screen behind me. So I turned to the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, which I think does a great job of kind of putting it succinctly. 21st century skills are really about the fusion of our current core curriculum, let's call them the 3 R's, with the 4 C's, those being critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. More and more important in this global economy in a world that seems to get smaller every day. More and more value, more and more information, more and more success comes from team-based collaborative approaches. P21 has an image that's always been very helpful to me. It's student outcomes and support systems. The rainbow, if you will, illustrates this notion of the 4 C's sort of infusing our existing curriculum. Pay more attention, though, to the bottom. These 4 support systems, it makes sense when you think about it. These 4 C's seem to be more about curriculum, instruction methods, and tools than maybe physical plans. But in fact, there is a way learning environments can support this idea. And these are summarized, I think, pretty clearly. Spaces that do a good job of supporting 21st century skills create practices and physical environments that support teaching and learning. These are spaces that support professional learning communities that enable our educators to collaborate at different scales, as well as allowing our students to learn in a relevant context through perhaps project-based work. We always want to allow equitable access to the curriculum and tools. And of course, we want to provide a 21st century architectural and interior design for our students, individuals, groups, and teams. So there's really 5 steps to seeing a building through fruition. The 2 I'm going to talk about today that most sort of closely impact 21st century skills in education are programming and design. So when I talk about a program, a math program or a social studies program, what am I talking about? I'm actually not talking about a curriculum. I'm not talking about a syllabus that the social studies department has prepared or teaching tools. In architect speak, program is actually a deliverable. It's the end result of an in-depth process. I like to say, to steal Willie Pena's expression, if design is problem solving, then programming is problem seeking. What is the intended function of the space in the building? What kinds of spaces do we need? What size should they be? What configuration should they be? How many are necessary? And what is their relationship to each other? Are there any functional or operational adjacencies that maximize the use of the space? And at the end of the day, what we wind up with, it's not a sexy document by any means, but really a very detailed accounting of all of the spaces we need in the building. This is just one corner of one page of a very thick document, but it allows the EFPBC and design team to sort of track and manage the classrooms, the teacher planning areas, conference rooms, the labs, what size, how many, what spaces need to be adjacent to one another. And then interestingly, we also compare that to the existing condition. That's something the MSBA is interested in as well. So after a few quick words about the process, are there some elements in the program that I can highlight today that support 21st century education? And there are. So I'll pick up first on a comment that Bill made a few minutes ago. That is consistency. So we're moving from, I think it's 38 classrooms today that range in size from as small as under 400 square feet to a little over 1,000. Our current proposal is 49 classrooms, all nominally about 870 square feet. It's about a 10% increase over the average classroom size, but more importantly, this consistency yields flexibility in that over the long term, we can move different portions of the program or curriculum in and out of spaces with less disruption. So we're also looking at some new elements. A couple that I'm interested in include large group instruction spaces. These are much larger than a classroom, have the potential to be double height spaces, necessary to support our interdisciplinary program. And of course, they also have the potential to serve as a community use after hours. At the other end of the spectrum, we have some small group seminar rooms. These do not need to be the size of the classroom, but are essential for instruction in online or distance learning. And then with respect to teacher planning, we're actually increasing the net square footage by about 17%, up to about 4,800 square feet, but consolidating these spaces, locating 2 blocks on each floor, very central to the classrooms. We do have a CAD lab today. It remains in the program, though larger. I'll point out to you the opportunity for daylighting you'll see in the image behind me as well. You'll see that sort of throughout the presentation, and it picks up on Bill's remarks as well. Included in the program is an innovation lab for our robotics engineering program. Okay, so if you've heard a rumor that we don't have a TV studio or production suite, that's not the case. Currently, WinCam's day-to-day operations, so the business entity of community cable, is not in the program. However, we do call for a new video production and editing suite. And I'm particularly interested in the lab component Bill spoke of earlier. The 10 existing labs we have today range from 500 to almost 800 square feet. What I'm most excited about is, aside from the increase in size, is that this actually allows for learning both at the desk and the bench. So if programming is problem seeking, then planning and design is problem solving. But unlike the jigsaw puzzle, the outcome's not predetermined. We do have a box to fill. We have a number of pieces to work with. But what's really important is that the EFPBC and the design team will work closely to understand sort of the optimal adjacencies and relationships of all these program pieces. So some of the key strategies moving forward, of course, consistency, and we picked that up with the program. But beyond that, adaptability, flexibility, and daylighting. So when I talk about adaptability, I'm talking about spaces that can literally be reconfigured in a very short order for no or low cost and sort of fundamentally change the nature of the space. So here's an example of a large seminar room. You see the sort of assembly of furnishings here. A nano wall has been pocketed, and it's adjacent to what looks like a soft space, a lounge area. And in doing so, by pulling that wall back, we've now fundamentally changed the shape of the room and the ability of that room to accommodate more people in a different way, again, during both school hours and after hours. But adaptability is not always just about interior spaces. We can actually push the envelope at the exterior wall as well. Think of the opportunity, perhaps, for an art studio to bring the outdoors in or to bring the indoors out. So the opportunities are really tremendous. So flexibility. So now we're talking about spaces that actually have multiple or dual uses. It's not about sort of physically modifying the space. In this instance, an image from a project SMA worked on, we see a soft space off the circulation corridor. We can accommodate some small group discussion with a teacher. We have some students with a interactive board over here. Of course, it's large enough to accommodate a larger group. And these walls as well can accommodate the various materials to be tacked up on the wall in a very kind of interactive way. So what we're trying to do is get ourselves out of the mindset that instruction only has to happen in a classroom, so labeled the four walls. Okay, I'll just speak very quickly to say that flexibility isn't just about individual rooms. It can apply to an entire floor, it can apply to an entire building. I'll just note for you the different colors and what they represent. We have as many spaces that are underutilized in the building today as are overutilized or short on space. And so one of the outcomes then, working through a programming process where our classrooms are consistently sized and our labs are consistently sized, is that allows us then to develop some consistent circulation patterns throughout the building. So you notice, for instance, this racetrack idea and classrooms that line the pod. That's a theme on the first floor that you'll see continue as we move up the building. So we see that the labs then occupy the sort of planned north and planned east pod. This would be Skillings right here to sort of orient you. So there's a consistency again in how these classrooms are laid out that tracks all the way up to the third floor of the building. So again, this kind of layout then accommodates, because we really don't know what's going to happen 10 or 12 years from now. We'll be looking at a departmental arrangement, an academy arrangement, a grade level arrangement. And so the EFPBC and the design team have worked through so many permutations of this to come up with a preferred concept. Lastly, just to say a word about daylighting. I think Bill's comments were pretty straightforward. We're dealing with a brutalist concrete box. We break it open. We'll see that today, as Bill said, very few spaces are immediately adjacent to the exterior wall to take use of daylighting. And so SMMA's approach from the very beginning, along with the EFPBC, is to turn that on its head. So just an axionometric view of what it means to take our direct instructional spaces and push them to the exterior of the building. And therefore, what we do is pulling into the middle some of our teacher prep areas and some of the softer space for students. So thank you for the opportunity to touch on some of those key things. In closing, I do want to ask you all to stay tuned, stay involved, and stay interested. The schematic design phase will be very quick. 4 months to do a tremendous amount of work. Much has been done in a year, but by August, so much about this project will really be sort of framed for steps forward. And then in terms of how you can participate, Bill mentioned the EFPBC meetings. They are at Town Hall on Wednesdays at 7 at the lower level. The chair welcomes anyone there to make comments during a public comment. We also have a project website. Links can be found on the town website at winchester.us and also at the district main website. And once you follow your way to the project website, you can submit questions and comments online. And those do go to the EFPBC where they're presented and reviewed. And anyone who submits a comment gets an answer back. So thank you all very much. I'm going to welcome Steve. Steve is going to speak about some sustainability opportunities on the project.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on your Sunday afternoon. I'm going to take a few minutes here and introduce you to some of the things that we're doing around sustainability and sustainable design within the high school project. Think of it as a sort of a walk through some of our thinking processes, but really at this time, I'm going to take you through a jog a bit through some of the sustainability thinking. Again, I'm Steve Lanou, and I'm a volunteer who's working on the subcommittee that's advising the EFPBC on issues of sustainability. And so we have met several times. We've submitted some preliminary recommendations to the EFPBC, really outlining what we think is a way forward for really harnessing the current innovation and best practices around environmental design, sustainability, and efficiency. So again, thank you to the League of Women Voters and everybody who's helped put this event on today. So what is sustainable design? Well, really basically, this is one of the few that I'll read to you, is reducing the negative environmental impacts through efficient, skillful, sensitive design while increasing the comfort, health, and productivity of its users. And while this doesn't encapsulate all of the aspects of sustainability, this really captures our thinking where we want to focus on in terms of where we're going. And then translated into green schools, and sustainability within schools, what this really means is addressing holistically not only the building, the structure, but also the people who are in it, the time that they're going to spend in it, and what they're learning, and the environment within which they're learning in a way that is going to be efficient, focused on saving money and resources, and enhancing the learning experience. So really, as opposed to green design, really what we're talking about here is high performance design. We're talking about leveraging the assets that we have and investing to make them higher performing, better energy efficiency, better indoor air quality. Often our building codes and regulations lag behind best practices. So what we're trying to do is facilitate a dialogue to really move forward to the high performance realm and move beyond what's really basics of required code. And through a green building and sustainable design, it has a number of areas that we address, including how are people getting to and from the site? How are people using water? Can we be doing it more efficiently? Can we reduce the amount of potable water? Can we control storm water better? Looking at energy and energy efficiency, indoor air quality, what kind of materials are we using in the buildings? Are they low chemical, low toxicity? Are they coming from locally sourced suppliers? And also innovation and design. There is opportunity to do new things differently, integrating some sustainability into the aspects of the curriculum. So why is it important? Well, building construction is the biggest building sector in the United States. So what we do here, best practices can be shared, have an impact nationally. But also interestingly, why does it matter here in Winchester? Interestingly, this was a slide put together by our energy management committee that really shows how massive the high school is compared to all of the other buildings in town. So the high school represents over 30% of all the energy used by the town. So there's this meaningful opportunity within this building alone, sort of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to address something big, and address it in a big way. So what I'm talking about is going to benefit the spectrum of users, from the students who are in it, the faculty who are teaching in it, and to all of us as taxpayers. If we do things smart in an integrated way, moving forward, we can get there. Indoor air quality. Asthma is shown to be one of the highest drivers of absenteeism in schools. If we provide better indoor air quality, we can reduce absenteeism through allergies and a number of other areas. They've discovered that also increasing the space and improving the space that teachers are working in, with better acoustics, better thermal comfort, that in fact is going to have a good impact on teachers, reduce their absenteeism, and make them a more comfortable place to work. And near and dear to me and to our project here is really looking at spending money wisely, looking for those efficiencies where we can save money so that we can reinvest them. We can use them, saving in the budget to be opening opportunities for teachers, supplies, you name it. So I promise you this is not the high school as far as I've seen it. But there's often a thought that sustainable design means something expensive, flashy, esoteric, and expensive, with a focus on bells and whistles. anywhere from buildings that are living and growing and producing your own food supply. And I'm here to say that while those features are terrific and pushing the envelope about what is possible, it doesn't have to be, it's not about bells and whistles, it's about really an integrated design to get more efficiency out of what we have. So obviously we're inheriting a building, we're inheriting a structure which doesn't look anything like those two previous pictures, and that's what we're going to have to work with. It's an opportunity to dig in and improve what we have. We know, as Chris said, it's a brutalist architectural style. It's pretty generous, I think, in terms of what it is. We know that it poses sort of an ugly face to our outside community and also to our inside community. There are very few windows. And where we do have windows, generally they don't open. They're not operable, right? There's no natural ventilation that's coming in. Also, where there are windows, it's putting light into the corridors and not into the classrooms. And so we can think about how to change that. Chris showed some good diagrams about how you can reorient everything in it, but we're really about maximizing natural daylight. We also can see that the landscape isn't necessarily designed and integrated with the building in order to improve the functionality of the building or enhance the learning. Where sustainable design can really think conceptually about how to better integrate what we're doing on the outside landscapes as well as the inside landscapes to provide some learning opportunities. So what does this mean? What can we do? Well, one of the big areas that we can focus on is energy efficiency. As I said, we can insulate the masonry walls. Do the walls 3 inches, insulate the roof. That's a big, well, not that sexy, it's a really important piece of what we call sustainability and redesign. We can and have to invest in high efficiency commercial boiler. Right? How are we going to heat and cool the organization, the institute? We have to invest in those equipment which is going to pay back in the long run. It means investing in adding best practices around lighting, around adopting efficient lighting across buildings. And we've shown in the Energy Management Committee, the terrific work that they've been done, that over time, focus on the schools, focus on the buildings to produce energy. This shows that over time, over here, that investments in energy efficiency has reduced the overall energy use. That top line shows what the energy costs would have been if we didn't invest in energy efficiency in towns. So the towns have been very smart about that. So it shows it works. But it's not just about energy efficiency. It's also about recycling. It's about green cleaning. It's about how people are getting to and from. It's about water. It also gives us an opportunity to start thinking about how can we better integrate the site with the town? How can we make it more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly? Can we reconceptualize some of the layout? And Betsy's going to talk a little bit about this, but really think about how are we using our space and can we use it in a more effective way. It also means some renewable power. We can put renewable energy systems back on the building. Here we've had some solar. We're talking about making the roof adaptable and flexible, as Chris mentioned, that will accommodate more renewable power. The state doesn't currently reimburse through this building process for renewable power systems, so we'll be looking for outside funding for that. The idea is let's build the infrastructure so that will support it when it does happen. Let's find what we can do to turn some of our sustainability efforts into learning opportunities into class. Let's work with our faculty, with our science teachers, build a dashboard that's showing our energy use. Let's build it into the curriculum so the students are going to be leaving there with a deep sense of understanding about what sustainability, efficiency, and redesign will be about. We all know there are good things at the school. There are wonderful aspects which we really just need to find those hidden gems and expand on them, bring the life back to the organization here. And it's really a summary, I think, that since I'd let you look at a lot of pictures, I'm going to leave you with a lot of text here to end. But really, a greener high school is going to be conserving energy. It's going to save us money in the long run by investing now so we can recoup those savings over time. We're going to improve our indoor air quality. We're going to get toxins out of the building. We're going to use daylighting to get the classrooms productive. We're going to use water more efficiently, reduce our waste within the building, conserve drinking water, encourage recycling, promotes habitat protection, reducing our load on the landfill that the town environmental literacy in our students when we think actively about how to integrate them. So this is what sustainability means to this project, and looking for the ways to leverage and invest. So how do you get involved? As Bill said, on the 5th of June here at 2:30, we're going to have a facilitated discussion really about what the community might be interested in. I've posted the preliminary recommendations that we submitted to the EFBBC at climatewinchester.wordpress.org. Have a look at them prior to the charrette. And lastly, if you're interested in engaging with us on the subcommittee, I'll be happy to take an email from you at stanu@mit.edu. So, thank you very much.
Here we go. Can everybody hear me all right? We're going to be here today on behalf of the planning board. We were asked to participate. I know some people will be trying to say, gee whiz, you know, what's a what? Okay, is that better? Okay, good. Thank you. I know it's been asked, why is the planning board here anyway? Don't they just do zoning? In fact, we don't. We work with any number of other community members, other boards, and other committees. We do work on zoning. We do work on zoning, is true, but only after a lot of research, consideration, and input. We work to ensure Winchester's sustainability into the 21st century. Environmentally, we're very concerned with energy use, flooding concerns, and transportation as well. Economically, we've spent the last 3 years working seriously on the Town Center initiative, of which the high school is a part, and retaining also, at the same time, the things that we love about Winchester, including our public school system. Well, we do have a few perspectives on the current project. As I said, we've spent a lot of time working over the last several years on the town center, and we're actually within spitting distance, as you well know. It's an essential part of the town center and should be integrated with the neighborhood, the rear, as well as to the community. All these connections are critical for both utilization and flow. We try to plan for sustainability. We encourage reducing energy use, and I think the Sustainability Committee is in a fine way of continuing on with that effort. Reducing impacts on the water table. We know that we have flooding problems here. What are some possibilities? Well, use of pervious pavements, for example. And certainly finding more usable green space. More about that in a minute. And finding ways to reduce auto use where feasible, utilizing trees and creating more green space around the school to create both amenable and inviting outdoor rooms. And that would include, for example, looking at some of the indoor-outdoor art spaces that Chris was talking about earlier. I think that something like that would be terrific. As key concepts, we're really looking at creating more usable outdoor space for school and community gatherings, performance, art space, maybe have some cool outdoor art gardens, for example, sculpture gardens. Consider ways to make the building more visually inviting and accessible. Of course, the brutalist architecture certainly doesn't help in that regard. Little we can do probably about that. But if we can do more with landscaping to really improve the visual appearance and to ensure that the public feels invited and that the building is in fact accessible. As Mr. Howard was mentioning earlier, we know that there are many uses for the school building beyond the educational. It's primarily an educational institution, and we are not going to get into the educational uses. That's really not our purview. But we are very, very concerned with how the school actually interacts with the community. In that regard, just because sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, this is all based off of GPS, looking at all this is coming from. One of the things that might be a possibility, where you see the bus pickup there, perhaps that shows it being moved a little bit closer to Skilling's Road, where to provide more green space there in front of the school that could be landscaped in a different way. Perhaps a different entrance, perhaps there on the left side might improve that, might improve space. These are just food for thought, if you want. What we are really concerned with, as I said, is really the flow of the neighborhood and the community, and improving those flows so that as the building is used, the community, as well as for students and faculty, and the people who are using it on a day-to-day basis, that people can get through and get to where they're going. For example, it might be possible to put some more parking on the west side, make that the main parking lot, and open up more green space on the west side. Like I said, food for thought. And just the whole notion of really being able to ensure that we've got some walking spaces and spaces for bikes also to be able to get through to the town center and back. And just as a visual, you can see there's the town center, there's the high school, very close by. Really is spitting distance. So the students themselves, as well as the people who use the school, add a lot to the vitality of our downtown businesses. We want that to continue. And we want other people who are using the school, whether it's for adult education, for meetings, concerts, any of those other activities, to also feel very, very welcome into the school. They have the capability of being able to get around the school easily if they have good circulation through the site. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Heidi is going to do the Q&A, so we're going to moderate the Q&A. Given that we only have one microphone, that we're going to have more microphones, I think that if you could stand up, raise your hand, stand up and shout your question, and then we're going to and see who do you want to, who do you want to answer the question, and then we'll have our presenters come back here. I think that might be, okay. Any questions?
Go ahead. Maybe yes? Can you say your name?
Yes, Phyllis Scarborough. I live on Spruce Street. I got my street here. I have two questions. Number one, I would like to know where the students going to park if they're taking away parking where it is there. That's number one. And number two, if they put the pool on this side, facing into Spruce Street, right now all we see in our street is the back of the high school. Will we still see more? Will there be more school pushed down? And I'm mainly concerned about the parking. I park out on my driveway between 7 and 7:30 in the morning. The cars go up and down and up and down.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you want to know what's going on.
Now, the students still park on our street, on Spruce and Holland. And it isn't fair for the neighborhood to have the
Okay.
students park.
So let's see if we can get some answers to that. We're looking at, number one, what are we doing about parking? She's interested, wants to know, what are we doing about parking? There are concerns about the current configuration of parking, and also if there is a pool, what would that entail? If there is going to be a pool or not?
Thank you, Heidi. Those are excellent questions, and they're very much concerns of the EFPBC. So you saw a suggested rendition of changing the parking, and I know that the design team working with the EFPBC is considering the issue of parking very, very carefully. Currently, there are approximately 288 parking spaces on this site. And that will accommodate all of the staff and approximately 120 to 130 vehicles for students. So that's not enough for the number of students who drive to school today. I know that there are thoughts and ideas about creating systems where we reduce the number of vehicles coming to the site. We all think that's a very good idea. I don't think that we have a specific answer yet or a solution to that, but something that's being worked on. So that will be an ongoing conversation. The school department certainly understands that there are issues with student parking behind the school on Spruce and Holland, and We understand that, and we're looking to find solutions so we can minimize that or make it go away. The second question, pool. Right now, my understanding is when this facility was designed back in the late 60s, there was a design for a pool complex which would be directly behind the gymnasium, right? So, where the red flash is. So one of the project as it now stands does not include a pool, but there's a community group that is working on trying to put together a plan and raise the funds necessary to pay for that complex. The Mass School Building Authority will not participate in that, and it has to be, if there's a pool complex, it has to be built adjacent to the building. Right now, in terms of the physical structure, we haven't seen any concepts which add any additional space. Thank you. On this side of the building, on the neighborhood side. So this line of where the structures are now, that will not be moving towards the neighborhood under any plan that we have. So that will not change.
Just as a quick comment, in terms of sustainability, an objective is to get people out of their cars and not driving so much to the school. So as Bill said, that has to do with improving and incentivizing people to walk and to bike. So it includes better pathways to the school, from the school, better connection to the town that make people want to walk, that makes it easier for people to walk and or bike and or take public transportation, however it can work. So it's very much, to your point, it's a community question, but it's also an environmental sustainability question.
Thank you. Just real quick, I just want to set some guidelines. If you could just, when you get up, state your name, and if the question, please make the question concise and brief if you can.
My name is microphone, please.
I can't go too far. I
First, I want to thank the presenters for coming today and offering the information to us, the public. One question that really came to me is, when people had asked me, was how does this project relate? How does it compare to a full rebuild in terms of how long is this project going to last versus a new school, because this is very expensive? And also, how do we deal with the fact that the site will still flood? I know that there's probably pollution of chemicals upstairs, but are the rooms that are going to flood? Is there still a chance of mold grows in areas of the building? And also the new structures, how will they stand up? And then also, sorry to not be concise, but also in terms of the presentation, I wonder if you're going to have a presentation with the design. There was a lot of things in Chris Nixon's presentation that was great. It would be great to have more details about how the process was worked through and what are those aspects the new schools can get.
Thank you, Mike. All great questions. So I'll go in reverse order. So this is, I think, I'll look in the front row for nods. I think this is our first presentation without the design team. The first community meeting was actually held on June 5th, 2012 with SMMA. Published and organized through the EFPBC, many members of which are here, present and accounted for today. Attendance has been, unfortunately, spotty. I'd say we have, actually today is probably the biggest turnout I've seen in all of these meetings, but people do come and there's some really thoughtful questions. And SMA and the EFPBC, I think, have done a good job sort of bringing everybody along. So I suppose Mike would say, because SMMA is not here today, I was somewhat reluctant to show too much of their work because I'd really like them to be here to sort of speak to it. But with the exception of the beautiful moving wall in Santa Cruz, California, that seems to have caught everyone's attention, I think all the other images did come from SMA and are all work of theirs in Massachusetts. I will also put in a quick plug for the website that I mentioned earlier. You can get a link to that off the town website. On the left side of that dashboard, you go under presentations, slides, and you will see PDFs or PowerPoints of all of their presentations beginning on June 5th. That are very clearly organized, and you can sort of see that iteration. And then to your earlier first question about cost, and I'll ask Bill to jump in if I don't fill in all the blanks. So, Winchester was once called Waterfield for a reason. And after the lengthy site review process that Bill described, which looked at the play fields at Lynch, that looked at a tower on Mount Pisgah, and all these other sort of permutations, one of the scenarios was to build a new high school on the other side of the tracks on Skilling's Field. In a sense, that would be ideal, because you can build the project, students are going to school here, they're not impacted by construction, and when you cut the ribbon, everybody just moves over there. We don't spend any money on swing space. Swing space is not reimbursed, by the way, by the state. That's one of the details that many have to be mindful of. But the problem is that I think there are two areas on Skilling's Field that are outside the floodplain. They're about the size of my dining room table. This building, the building itself, is largely outside of the floodplain. Many of the parking lots and landscape areas are. But what was very interesting to me at the time when I was on the EFPBC, we got regular updates on flood mitigation. I'm sure many of you are aware of this multi-year plan to mitigate and sort of reduce the flooding potential in town. You saw some evidence of that right down here at the Post Office Bridge most recently. The two most important projects that impact flooding on this site are not in our town. It's the dam up in Woburn on Horn Pond, and it's Craddock Locks, which is Main Street in Medford. So those are kind of outside our control. We can't pull too many strings. When they happen, they will have a positive impact on buildability of property in town. The EFPBC is well informed through the AE team on the status of those projects, and it is hoped, and I don't think it's much of a reach actually, that given the schedule that Bill pointed to earlier, with each project there is some improvement in the floodplain, and there is this, I think we will be petitioning, if we haven't already, for a remapping. When that happens, we will get some more, call it relief, for site planning on this site. So the design team will have some more opportunities. Is that fair, Bill? Did I leave anything out?
So quickly, just on the phasing and the cost. The vetting of the cost of the feasibility study showed that all of the new building options were more expensive than the renovation addition here. And that included a potential new building on Skilling's Field. And the reason for that cost being more expensive is the fact that we had to plan that a project on Skilling's Field would not be able to be started until probably 2016, 17, 18, maybe even later, because the flood mitigation work would all have to be completed. All but probably an area less than the size of this auditorium, probably half the size of this auditorium, is in the floodplain of Skilling's Field. You cannot build in a floodplain. Secondly, the only other possible viable site was the town forest. And that's about 28 acres, less than 20 acres would be usable because there are wetlands there. The topography there and where it's located would make it a very, very difficult project, not only because it's surrounded by residential housing and residential neighborhoods. There's no infrastructure going into that site. That would be a large cost. And when all that was cost out, and then there are legal restrictions on the town forest land as well. And then the question with the community support, making the town forest high school site. I don't think so, but anyway, maybe I'm wrong. But it was all those other factors, the legal issues, the cost that ruled that out. So in terms of phasing, one of the pieces the addition renovation project, the design team will tell you, is estimated to be about 4 years. We start in early 2015. We can wrap up the work of the auditorium in the high school in the 2018-19 school year. That's a long time. And I know parents might be asking themselves, well, if I have a son or daughter who's a freshman and is going to be entering school in 2015, they'll spend all 4 years in our construction zone. And essentially, that's partially true. Under the plan that we're considering, we're looking to maximize the amount of swing space so that we can reduce that 4-year timeline considerably. A new school would take 30 to 32 months to build. Students wouldn't be impacted, that's true. But under this plan, we would start in early 2015 for the remainder of that school year, those 6 months through June. That would not impact anything that goes on within the building. Here, it would mean those 6 months would be spent constructing and getting the swing space necessary. When students came back for the 2015-16 school year, the 2 of the pods would be taken offline. Those students would be relocated to the swing space, to the modulars. And actually, it's 1 pod plus the core of the building, and that work would take approximately 1 year. So that by the 2016-17 school year, students would actually be getting the benefit of moving into a third of a brand new building. And that will continue over the next 2 years. But that's the plan right now. There's a lot more details to work out on the phasing, and we'll be sharing those details as we go on.
Point of information, please.
John?
Yes. Well, my point of information is that the Q&A is advertised to be half an hour. We burned through about 20 minutes. There's been 2 questions. May I respectfully suggest that the answers be a lot shorter, so those of us who have questions can ask them. I have a question in response. Yeah. My name is John Natale. I'm a town meeting member on Chester Street. And first off, thanks to the league for organizing this quick meeting, and to the EMPEA and the school committee and the superintendent for giving this Sunday afternoon to us. My question has nothing to do with the design, nothing to do with the cost, nothing to do with the 20, 30 years, an increased real estate taxes that's paid for, and nothing to do with the meaning. My question has to do with the date of the opening scheduled now for January. It is an absolute indisputable fact that November has about 5,000 more voters than any other month, particularly January, which is often a brutal month for weather. A lot of people just don't show up. So, given that, why then is January and not November chosen? Particularly since it's a matter of good public policy, particularly since we have much greater voter participation, which is what it's all about. So I don't get the January date at all. Now, before you answer that question, just another minute or 2, please.
30 seconds.
Okay. No. I've written 2 letters to the MSBA, and every cognizant committee in town has received fellowship. I got no answer from the MSBA. When I recently spoke to the chief operating officer, Matt Donovan, and his assistant, a guy named Milliken, both of whom tell me that the MSBA has no interest in when any town takes a vote. That's entirely up to the purview of the town. So to say that that is out of our hands, that our hands are tied, is a misrepresentation. It's not a lie, but it's a misrepresentation that sort of has to allow to continue. So there is no constraint. And in this era of federal government major scandals, I really urge the town of Winchester, and this committee in particular, to reconsider the January vote and sidestep what I perceive to be a growing public cynicism, and maybe fight a fatal cynicism for this school.
Thank you. Some of what John said is kind of politically accurate. Some of it, I think, is inaccurate, though, John. And you and I have both talked with Matt Donovan in relation to your question that you put forward there. The town does not control when the vote takes place. The vote has to be scheduled within a certain period of time after the Mass School Building Authority makes its decision to put forward a project funding agreement that reimburses the town at whatever percentage it's going to be. And as you heard, it should be somewhere between 33 and 40% reimbursement. When they take their vote, which is, as you heard earlier, scheduled for October of this year, that is when our architects and the EFPBC should be done with this analysis and presentation. They'll put it forward to the MSBA for a vote. Within a certain period of time after that, 120 days, the town has to make its decision about whether or not it wants to fund the project.
That's not true.
It is true. It's state regulation.
The 120 days only applies if the vote is rejected for reconsideration.
You know what? We're not going to solve this here in the...
Yeah, we can't really debate the issue, but the town's required to hold its funding decision within that period of time. Now, we could have, with this analysis, architecturally and feasibility, gone to a different time of the year, gone to a different MSBA meeting they held on kind of a quarterly basis, their board meetings. But the way the schedule plays out now, the work should be done and our presentation should be submitted to the state by October. They'll take a vote, presumably authorizing the project to move forward to a great extent in the format that we've seen presented here. The town will then have to make its decision about whether or not it wants to fund the project, according to the state regulations, not the town regulations.
The town voted first.
Well, you won't know what it is you're voting on because it's required to get. If you want to participate with state funding, the town could obviously do it all on its own if it wanted to. But if you want to participate with the MSBA for the percentage funding that the state is offering, they have to go through this feasibility process. They have to vote your project and vote your funding agreement that attends your project. From that point on, you will understand exactly how much of the burden financially you'll bear as a town for the overall anticipated cost of the project.
Most respectfully, I will give this up, but the only way to resolve this is to invite Matt Donovan, the chief operating officer of the NBA, and right in, ask him the question in public.
Yeah, John, I think it's a good point. We'd be glad to clarify that maybe with either a writing or if an MSBA personnel such as Matt is willing to appear at the June 5th rollout that we have planned for the community, we'd be glad to try to do that just to clarify that. Yeah.
Do we have other questions regarding the high school design at all right now?
Thanks, Becky. Janet Boswell, Summit Avenue. My question is, I understood that the new building, or I thought we were going to have a new building on the existing site, but I didn't realize that we were actually using the foundation. And I know that things have changed a lot since the 1960s in terms of how we build buildings to survive earthquakes. So I wanted to talk about
I can be brief on that. The renovation will include all the construction necessary to meet the codes, the seismic codes.
Over here.
Hi, Tom McCormick, 17 Adams Street. Arguably the closest resident to the high school. Can you talk about a little bit about the noise pollution, not the students, but the physical building itself, the HVAC system, and what's going into the new plan?
Questions about noise pollution with the HVAC system? How it affects the neighbors or just?
Yeah, I mean, the physical building itself, the noise, and
So I will answer that by making an analogy to the VO project, given that that building is about to open, and it followed the process that the EFPBC that this will as well. So Steve Lanu, who was up here earlier, talked about a sustainability subcommittee. I expect, and I'm looking for my friends on the FPBC to tell me if I'm wrong, but I would expect on a project of this scale to have something similar we did on VO, which was to have a mechanical systems subcommittee to look at those very issues, top to bottom. That's been an issue in a number of institutional projects in Winchester over the past 3 or 4 years, and I'd expect members to be sensitive to that. So it's not just about the equipment, where it's located, penthouses, sound attenuation, it's hours of operation, so it's really many things that factor into it, and I would expect this would very much be on the radar of the EFPBC. At this stage, however, too soon to say.
okay.
That's Jim Whitehead, Precinct 7. Just at this stage of the costing, you're probably at plus or minus 25%, something on that order. What sort of a level of estimate do you expect at the time of vote? And if there are cost overruns, how do they get shared between the town and MSBA?
Jim, I'm not quite sure how to answer the first part of the question, the comment about 25% either way. The intention, certainly the understanding, and the direction we're moving in terms of the EFPBC is our expectation that when our final project scope of budget is submitted, that that number will not be higher than $127 million. And we're doing everything possible as we go through the schematic design phase to identify ways to bring that number down. That's a commitment we've made. In terms of overruns, what will happen is the MSBA will approve a project scope and budget that will identify its share of the funding. They call it a school building grant, and that does not change. And so moving forward, after we go through the bidding process, hopefully that comes with, the bids come within the budget, and then there will be, given the nature of this project, as I understand it, there certainly will be a healthy contingency fund that's included in that budget. And if there are cost overruns, that's where we would go. And depending on the nature of the issue, the MSBA may or may not participate in their share of the reimbursement for that particular cost overrun. Oh, good. Thanks, Brendan. As we go through this process, we're required by MSBA toward the end of the schematic design to procure 2 independent cost estimates, and the architect and the project manager are then responsible for, if there is a difference, bringing those parties together and determining what the differences in those cost estimates are and coming to some kind of resolution on that. But that's required part of the process.
We're running out of time. We have time for a few more questions. I'll take 3 more questions. You already heard it, certainly.
This is on the East 17 Fletcher Street. Two quick questions. First one is regarding the pool. If a pool became something that the group organizing the pool successfully got to a point where they could ask you if they wanted to pay for it, would it appear lumped in with the override question, or would it be a separate question? Okay. Second question is, what efforts are being made to negotiate with the MSBA in terms of what future enrollment may look like, in terms of whether the MSBA has a different view on what the enrollment may be, particularly in my mind thinking about the possibility that some people may choose not to send their child to private school when the building looks better and more.
That's a billion-dollar question.
In terms of the enrollment, that process has been completed with the MSBA. We worked with them on this earlier, about 16 months ago. We came to a conclusion, and the agreement was that the building would be designed for 1,370 students. So that's the enrollment design.
And just a show of hands, what's the question? I'm going to get to it. We have a chance.
Hi, Robert Lacey. I have a freshman and a second grader, so I'm not all crazy familiar with the high school. Other than this building and the gym, I've been in the building once. So, and you're going to be asking me to spend a lot of my money and increase taxes for this project that you sound like it's going to be like an $80 million override. You haven't convinced me yet. I don't have a clue what the problems are with the building. I was expecting to hear that today. You talked about some physical plant issues. Fine, that will cost a couple $1 million, a few $1 million to fix. That's not $127 million. The sustainable guy kept talking about air quality issues or improved air quality. Is there bad air quality now? I don't know. No evidence has been put forth as that. Excuse my ignorance, but I'm just becoming aware of the project. Yes, a lot of people in town say it's a crappy building. That doesn't really do it for me. You know, I don't really care what the thing looks like. It seems like we're putting out pretty good educated students that get into all the best colleges around the country. So the education doesn't seem to be limited in what I see. So a lot of convincing is going to be needed to be done by me, and I'm thinking some other folks in town before I'm going to agree to probably raise my taxes by $1,000 a year, maybe. I don't know how much $80 million puts on my tax bill, but I'd like to hear some more robust reasons for why the breadth and extent of this project needs to be what it is.
Thank you. Steve, do you want anybody more?
You don't have to get drawn now.
Let's talk about the air quality issue.
I just want to actually thank you for your candor. That is one of the most helpful things I've heard in this process. Because you're quite right that those of us who give our time to either the schools or the EFPBC or the planning board or any other sort of community service function have a familiarity with these issues that many people don't. So far better for us to hear that kind of feedback from you now than to hear it sometime between in November and February when we fail at a debt exclusion override. So, my charge today, the lead asked me to talk specifically about 21st education spaces, so I did that. But I think what you tap into is a need for moving forward. And I know many EFPBC members here today, I heard just what you said, we need to work harder to be more robust about talking about those very things to make the case. And I do appreciate that very much.
Maybe what's in the newspapers is it's not in the paper at all.
I'm David Anderson from the Design Review Committee, and also a high school parent and a 1982 graduate. I'm an architect, so I do care about what the building looks like, but I share a lot of your problems that as the design has progressed thus far, I have a lot of issues with it, and I think a lot of people like me will have a lot of problems going for the override. I think there are a lot of, I know people on the EFPBC have heard me say this before, that there are issues with the development of the site and even some of the programming within the building that I do not find the way it's being addressed remotely satisfying. And I think SMMA, as well as the EFPBC, are going to need to address a lot of those issues very specifically. And I just don't see that happening yet. So I think the site issues that are, some of the slides that Betsy Prager showed, begin to get at some of those issues. The issue of parking and sustainability is really key, but I don't see how SMMA is dealing with. Is there a change in the parking programming number? And so there are a lot of those issues that I think have to be worked through in a more holistic way before I have been to many of these meetings, and I have a lot of fundamental questions, and I know a lot of people who are less familiar have even more fundamental questions.
If you're willing to stay, you can go a couple.
Just a quick question, Michelle Pryor. At an average cost of $100,000 per student, how does this building compare with a new Wellesley High School and new Wilmington High School in terms of comparative costs? Hopefully that information can be shared in future analysis.
I didn't completely hear the whole question. It was about.
It was a request for additional information, how $100,000 per student compares with comparable new high schools in surrounding towns, Wilmington, Wellesley.
How much this cost per student here compare with other?
So Michelle, I don't have the numbers for those specific communities in my head, but I can tell you there's been quite a lot of discussion about that issue generally at the EFPBC table. SMMA has that information. I think it would be appropriate for them to bring it forward. A part of that discussion, though, will include that as Massachusetts, we've been fortunate not to have been impacted as heavily as some other parts of the country in the biggest economic recession since the Great Depression, but we are clawing our way out of it, and there's maybe no better evidence of that than in the institutional construction industry. So much debate occurred over the past few months with the MSBA. The $127 million price tag that Richard and Bill have spoken to some degree, I think took the MSBA by surprise. They were looking back at construction costs of projects that were complete or had been open for a year or two. They were reflecting back on bids that were already 3 and 4 years old. What we're seeing in institutional construction is just rapid change. So Wellesley is interesting to me because I think of it as a peer community, but from a timeline point of view, it's frankly good news. But what SMMA could certainly do is bring that information back, as well as what I would call similar or peer projects in terms of size and maybe similar in terms of schedule, so you can see where other projects are bidding that have just come off the design boards.
I'm going to take the last question, but there's plenty of opportunity for public input at the coming meeting, so I encourage you all to attend them.
Hi, Marilyn Manning, 33 Road Street. I'm just wondering if the impact of climate change has been considered. I'm sorry, I was wondering if the impact of climate change has been considered in the design of the renovation and addition project. Thank you.
I'll quickly hand it over to you, though. The question is, has the impact of climate change been taken into consideration in the design? And I presume the question is focused on climate adaptation. Are we taking into consideration expected increases in rainfall, hotter temperatures? So I can say from a sustainability point of view in terms of the overall building, taking into account one of the driving reasons for we're focusing on energy efficiency beyond costs are their contributions to global environmental problems. But whether the school is actually taking into consideration climate adaptation strategies, I can't speak to the technical aspects, the engineering aspects of that, whether they're looking into the future modeling for rain, increased precipitation.
So I'm going to try to interpret which path you were taking in that question, Marilyn. So my answer is less about water, more about solar gain, mechanical costs, building cooling. I would expect this project to follow a similar path, certainly from an exploration point of view. What we've just done at VO. Vincent Owens is the first school building in town that has a white TPO roof, that's thermoplastic olefin, as opposed to a black asphalt modified built-up roof. white roof is more reflective, so you're going to reduce the heat load on the building, and that reaps rewards because you're cooling less. It's a very long-lived membrane. It was cutting-edge technology 15 years ago, a little less so today, but it's our first building, and I'm excited that we're doing it. There is a small premium for it, but I think it reaps rewards down the line, and I'd expect us to be looking seriously at these kinds of things on the high school as well. And can I say, Heidi, one other important thing, because this came up at the last EFPBC meeting that David and others attended, and I should have said it in my presentation. The slides that I showed you and that you will see on the town website that show cutaways of the existing high school with new planning concepts on the interior, you will notice there's no change in the exterior of the building, so please don't be fooled. So what SMMA was doing was simply trying to tell a story about how you can replan the inside of the box. Each pod, when renovated, as Bill described, will become what I like to describe. It'll look like a concrete parking garage. Interior walls, exterior walls, building systems, gutter. We're taking it down to the structure. We're making some improvements to the seismic needs that Ms. Boswell was concerned about earlier. So this is a complete reskinning of the building, looking at more opportunities to bring in daylighting, and absolutely more insulation that Steve spoke to. His slide happened to show a masonry wall. We may not go that direction. So really, all options are on the table. And in particular, SMA is going to be talking about that in the next 2 or 3 community meetings. We're getting to that point to start talking about materiality of the project, and that'll be important. That'll start to tell us what the character of the building will really look like.
So I'm going to have Juanita round it up. Thank you all for participating. Thank you for coming on this Sunday, sunny afternoon. I don't know if it's raining, I guess, but and on a busy weekend.
Thank you. Remember the dates behind your handouts and next that you can do public comment. Thank you very much, presenters, for this. It was a very good, as I said, it's a good baseline information, and if you want more details, come to the meetings. The League of Women Voters is all about participation, and we can only participate correctly if we are well educated. Come to the meetings. Thank you.